We have been blessed with some incredible games this generation, but the team thought it would be interesting to choose our top 10 games released so far. It was hard, and a few games that were worthy did not make the cut, but this is our collective list of the best games released so far. If you were to tell us, that this generation, a Harvest Moon clone made by one person originally would be one of the best games of the generation, I would probably have laughed in your face. It's work, but I love it. When I say that it's work, I mean you wake up every day and you are a farmer. You have to, water your crops, feed your animals. You have to clear your farm of any debris or anything that's obstructing your farm space, so to speak, and that's what I mean. It is work, it is quite tedious, but it's just so fun and so addictive. Even when I'm explaining it, if you have no prior knowledge of the type of game that it is, it probably sounds really boring, but it's just brilliant. It's simply brilliant. Put simply, it's a 2D farm simulator, but it's hella addictive, like really addictive, a very solid game. It's a perfect time waster. It's a must purchase, especially if you have a Switch. So if you've got a console on the go, I believe it's on mobile phones now as well. I don't know how well the controls translated, but I spent probably definitely over 100 hours playing this on the Switch on the go. You can build relationships, you can get married, you can just go around the town and help people with their issues, with their problems. You can go fishing, there's loads of things you can do. You can dungeon crawl to an extent as well to get certain materials. There's loads to do in the game. It just goes to show that you don't need a massive team with significant financial backing to actually develop an extraordinary game. To summarize, if you're looking for a relaxed, chilled, slow-paced game that you can just sink a large amount of hours into, definitely pick this up. Sakura, another pleasant surprise. So, From Software released Dark Souls, which changed the game, which we're going to do another Game Changers actual video on soon. It effectively created its own subgenre, that being the Souls-like, which is, of course, games which are... I don't actually know what defines a Souls-like. I don't know if it's the difficulty or the type of games that they are, but I digress. Sakura is a Souls-like, a very difficult game, but the gameplay is immaculate. No game kind of punishes you for doing bad but rewards you for doing well as Sakura does. Very few games do it, at least. It's an incredible journey. It has an interesting lore, interesting setting, interesting characters, interesting enemies, interesting gameplay even. It's almost like I wouldn't say it's a rhythm game, but there is a rhythm to it. When you first pick it up and first start playing it, myself being a Dark Souls fan and then Bloodborne, it's a very different beast. FromSoft have managed to create 3 games which, although they are similar in a lot of regards, they're also very different. This game was a breath of fresh air. It was another new IP that I had no idea was going to be as good as it was. I had so much fun with this game, it was ridiculous. FromSoft seemed to have mastered developing games that don't have a lot of dialogue or traditional quests or side activities, but it still instills that sense of adventure because of how different and how unique the world map's designed. But it's just overall a fantastic game. It's not for the faint of heart, so if you're looking for an easy game or a game that's relatively lightweight, I wouldn't go for this. This is definitely a hardcore game, but it's definitely one worth picking up if you're looking for a challenge, looking for something a bit different, and you're looking for a unique take on the action kind of genre.
My name is Kyobu Masataka Oniwa!
Bloodborne is often described as the magnum opus of Hidetaka Miyazaki, and personally I would agree. I'm a massive Soulsborne fan, and despite the misstep of Dark Souls 2, in general, I think they're excellent games that subvert expectations and have redefined what a modern action RPG can be. Bloodborne is the perfect example of a modern video game that expresses its themes through gameplay, said themes being despair and cosmic horror with a Lovecraftian coat of paint. It's a flat-out masterpiece, and there's nothing more rewarding than overcoming a situation that initially seemed impossible. Where Bloodborne really stood out from its previous Soulsborne titles is the lack of a shield. This simple change, as well as a significant boost in speed over its predecessors, forced the player to change tried and tested Soulsborne strategies and focus on positioning, mobility, and counter-attacking at the correct moment. In Bloodborne, the fragile hunter finds himself surrounded by a host of murderous, nightmarish abominations in the fictional city of Yharnam. The odds can seem tipped in the balance of the ghoulies, as the hunter is as speedy as they are squishy. However, this delicate balance gives the combat a dance of death feel, and the adrenaline will always be on full blast whenever you pick up the controller. If you currently own a PS4 and have yet to pick this title up, I strongly suggest you do so. It's been 5 years, what are you waiting for?
Don't take any chances.
My god, do I love this game, without a doubt. This is arguably the greatest, obviously the latest entry into the franchise, and you can see Sakurai and the team at Nintendo have truly polished and refined their craft with this one. Not only do we get what we expected, being an amazing, fun brawler, but we got a lot more than we expected at the same time. I don't think anybody really expected the game to be as finely tuned, for lack of a better phrase, as this game is. There's no more of the slipping or any foolishness from Brawl. It's just a brilliant game with a roster that kind of shits on a lot of other video games out there. It's not even just a case of point of, oh, they've got a lot of characters. It's that each character brings its own thing to the table, for the most part. There are a few clones still, but even those clones have their own merits that you want to play with them over another character. Yeah, I can't praise this game enough. I kind of wish that it would be very nice if Sakurai was to turn around at the end of this DLC pack and go, yeah, we got more DLC for you. I would love for this game to have like a 10-year lifespan, but it's got to come to an end. All I can say while I'm on the topic of DLC is they've done amazingly with that as well. The fact that they've offered us so much DLC to actually play with is brilliant. It's brilliant. Easily the best fighting game we've had this generation. I'd probably say one of the best fighting games we've had, full stop.
Don't let a single one get away!
Resident Evil 2. Let me just start off by saying, when it comes to horrors, I'm an absolute coward. So you've got more modern horrors like Outlast and Amnesia, where they've completely gone against the original kind of survival horror kind of template, where they've stripped you of all your weapons or any ability to kind of defend yourself, which of course is good, but I was starting to miss your traditional kind of survival horror games. Growing up, Resident Evil 2, the original, I was way too young to play that, and with 3, my first foray into Resident Evil as a gamer was 4, but of course it was more action orientated. So I got really excited when I heard they were remaking Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 is a solid and engaging remake. If you are, afraid of horror games like I am, this is still worthwhile. Everything is just done right. It sounds amazing, it looks amazing, it plays amazing. Mr. X is horrifying, but at the same time he's quite fair. The lickers are horrifying. Everything about the game is just done very, very well. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It has 3 main settings, one being the police station, the second one being the sewers, and the third one being the kind of Umbrella underground complex, I believe. But honestly, it's an amazing game, so definitely pick this up.
Jesus Christ.
God of War 2018 for the PS4 was a brilliant game, and they really reinvented the wheel in terms of what a God of War game could be. Because even though it's the 8th installation in the franchise, and even though it's dropped any number, like any title number, and it's simply God of War, it still follows the progression from, I believe it's a sequel to God of War 3, and it's just a completely different beast in terms of gameplay, storytelling. Whereas the other ones were good, don't get me wrong, I definitely enjoyed the earlier iterations of the game. They were a lot more cartoonish and they didn't take themselves too seriously, whereas God of War 2018 definitely does take itself seriously, but it works. It manages to make it work because it's got beautiful graphics, it's got really good voice actor performances, it's got a really engaging story about Kratos and his son, and Kratos coming to terms with his past and learning about how that affects his son's future, as well as this whole fish out of water narrative, because Kratos is now in Midgard, which is home of the Norse gods, whereas before he was in Sparta and the Greek lands with the Olympian gods and stuff like that. It's just a brilliant game, and they really nailed it they took a risk, and it definitely paid off.
Boy.
The Witcher 3. It's an open world action RPG at its core, but has some of the best side quests available in any game I've ever played in my life, hands down. So stating this first may seem like a disservice, but honestly, the side quests are done so well that it becomes hard to differentiate the difference between a side quest and a main quest at certain points. Also, the addition of choice adds an extra layer. The game can play out differently depending on what you choose to do as a player. You will get lost in the world, you'd have fun hunting the monsters. Once again, doing the main quest and the side quests are just as deep as one another. It's an incredible game. I went in hoping for a sandbox RPG like Skyrim, and although I admittedly was initially disappointed, I quickly came to realise that The Witcher 3 was a different and arguably better beast, or better definitely in some regards. So make sure you take your time with this one, and make sure you play this game, whether it be on Switch. It's on Switch now, on PC, on PS4, on Xbox One. This is definitely one that you have to actually experience, and it's one that can be experienced multiple times.
What are you doing?
Killing monsters.
Red Dead Redemption 2, for my money, was the game of the generation. It was highly anticipated, so expectations were already high, but Rockstar just nailed it, just straight out of the park. They outdid themselves. They didn't reinvent the wheel per se, but they did build upon what they'd already established in the first game. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a prequel to their critically acclaimed Red Dead Redemption, and takes place 12 years before the events of the first game. It follows one of the best video game, if not the best voiced video game protagonist of all time, Arthur Morgan. I've never empathized with a main character in a video game as much as I empathize with Arthur Morgan, to the point where when you finish the story and you're no longer playing the game, you miss Arthur and you want to spend some more time with Arthur and hearing his mannerisms and how he interacts with the world around him. They just nailed it at every aspect. There's hours upon hours of side contents and activities you can do, as well as the main storyline. There's an online mode where you get to create your own cowboy, customize them to be outlaws or to be bounty hunters, or build your own posse, whatever you want to do. It's got beautiful graphics, it's got an amazing score. It's just the game of the generation, hands down. For me personally, it was literally defined the generation.
Well, maybe when your mother's finished mourning your father, I'll keep her in black on your behalf. You think on that, boy?
Divinity Original Sin 2. This game, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated titles ever created. Now, I understand, of course, it's a niche title, only a particular type of gamer would probably like a game like this, but it's absolutely incredible. It surprised me. So I originally played the first game after looking at loads of different reviews, but whenever I, of course, watched footage or a review of the game, though, I couldn't see where the magic was until, of course, I played it, right? So I at first hesitantly rented it from an online video game website. I then proceeded to take the entire week off from work, sick, quote unquote sick. In simple terms, it's a turn-based role-playing game. It's multiplayer, so you can actually experience the entire game with up to 4 friends or 4 random players. You can play competitively or cooperatively, which makes absolute mayhem ensue. I've never experienced a game that has such interactivity in the way that you can affect the world and use, the game's rules to accomplish tasks or just do things. If you're an RPG fan of any kind, please give this game a chance.
Just as I'd planned.
Breath of the Wild is generational. Breath of the Wild is sensational. Breath of the Wild is indescribable without doing it an injustice. Few times in my life have I been blown away by a certain aspect of a game, whether that be wonderfully crafted jungle running stealth of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, or the expansiveness of Elder Scrolls Skyrim. Breath of the Wild manages to capture freedom, loneliness, triumph, wonder, and so many more feelings I can't quite vocalize. From running out onto the overhang and glaring out into the vastness of Hyrule before you, to realizing that the Great Plateau is just a fragment of what the world truly is, Nintendo made a myriad of great decisions in taking the series to a new place. This game is number 1 because it is the greatest game I have ever played. Breath of the Wild wasn't everything we wanted, but it was everything that we needed.